Thank you very much. I know we are the pre-lunch session, so we'll try and keep you engaged and off your mind from the food. What I'll do is I'll start off by asking the panelists to give a 1-minute introduction.
Thanks, Vikram. So Bank Bazaar is India's largest marketplace for instant financial products. So we help people access the right financial products across banking, which are loans and cards, insurance, and also mutual funds. Our USP is that we enable paperless delivery on the mobile phone. So as a consumer, let's say you wanted to buy a mutual fund, or let's say you wanted to get a debit card or a credit card, you could just open up your phone, go through the entire process, which involves the Aadhaar stack, and you would have that product delivered to you without having to run around and with the confidence that you are accessing the right product. So we've seen a tremendous amount of growth over the last few years and looking forward to chatting about it.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Abheek Anand. I'm here representing the Sequoia Capital team. I work on the tech investing side of the world over there, where we do early stage investments across the board in tech, consumer products, and healthcare. We've been looking at fintech and sort of been active investors in this space for several years now. Clearly, sort of the size of this audience indicates there's a lot of interest right now in this sector because of everything that's going on. Demonetization is obviously one of them, but there are many other trends as well that we are noticing. As a result, we are actively looking to make more investments in this space, and we suspect we'll make a few this year as well. And we are shareholders in several companies that are doing quite well, including Bank Bazaar and many others as well. So look forward to this discussion.
IFMR Holdings. At IFMR, we believe that access to finance brings freedom. Freedom of choice to achieve your goals, and that's what sort of drives our business strategy. We have 3 verticals within IFMR. One is a rural retail financial institution, which is providing wealth management services to about 700,000 households in tier 6 villages in India. The second is a large sort of capital markets platform that provides access to debt capital markets for about 120 odd financial institutions that are focused on the low income and the underserved household. And the third is sort of a fintech platform that really deeply drives customer centricity at the last mile through technology. Through this 3-pronged approach, we believe we can achieve our mission of complete access to finance. Fintech is a hugely exciting wave. Really looking forward to this panel discussion.
Yeah, I'm Archit, founder and CEO of ClearTax. And so ClearTax helps individuals do their tax returns online. So in this country, the number of people doing their tax returns is going up. So that's what we do. And today, about 12 lakh individuals file their tax returns on the ClearTax platform. We also have 10,000 plus CA firms who help businesses and individuals do their taxes online. So basically, what we are doing in the fintech space is first simplifying people's lives in terms of their taxes, how they go about doing tax savings and those things. From a business perspective, one of the things we are helping is GST, which is Goods and Services Tax, which changes how the indirect tax system of the country works, providing a unified platform online. And these are some of the things we do. Very exciting times.
Thank you. I'm Vikram. I run Innovate, which is a very early stage fund. Typically, we like to be the first check in the companies we invest in. I think what we have here is a really stellar panel. We have a number of market leaders. I know Bank Bazaar is a leader in its space. So is ClearTax. And Abheek has been backing a lot of leaders in the space. And I know IFMR has been doing some very interesting work addressing the bottom of the pyramid. So we also have representation from companies addressing the bottom of the pyramid as well as the middle income. So I think Mr. Modi would be very happy if he was here right now. So it'll be very interesting. So I think I would love to hear what the panel thinks about how demonetization has impacted their individual businesses or portfolios.
So I can start. So we have some real data because we've been tracking it very closely. So I think a couple of interesting trends. So trend number one is we saw the number of people who are coming online to check about financial products dramatically increase post-demonetization. So for example, at Bank Bazaar, pre-demonetization, we were at about 9 million visitors a month. And post-demonetization, that jumped up to 12 million visitors a month, just because of the fact that so many more people were coming online and saying, how do I pay electronically? People who had one debit card wanted two. People who never had a credit card realized that they have to keep one. And even people from older generations started realizing that. We also realized that now that all the money is in the banking system, people now needed to put that money to use. So a lot more people inquiring and buying mutual funds, for example, on the paperless platform. A lot of people checking, for example, on the insurance products. A lot of people checking on payment options. Certain products which involved assets ended up slowing down a little. So for example, I think home purchases and anything to do with homes, right? Because I think of the impasse in the market, they ended up slowing down. Now, overall, we see that a lot more people today are savvy enough that they want to know how to operate in the new world. And we see the big push towards paperless and cashless, right? Actually benefiting the digital ecosystem.
Yeah, so for ClearTax, the impact was pretty interesting. Again, backed by data, like the number of queries jumped like 4x from the baseline immediately the day after demonetization, and like stabilized at about 2x. Like the number of taxpayers entering the mainstream economy will increase dramatically. I think like overall, as we talk to the government officials regularly and we see the data, I think their estimation in the next 4 years, the taxpayer base of India should double. Like that's the kind of goal the government has for themselves, and demonetization was one of the strongest pushes there. Now, like if you look at the cash declaration, like the Operation Clean India of the Income Tax Department, which just came about, like you see a lot of effort the tax department has been putting in for bringing people into the tax network. So what we saw was a lot of people who had savings in cash or like were earning in cash income, like suddenly looking to enter mainstream economy, doing their taxes, acquire a PAN number, declare all these transactions. And as they get like an electronic system of record, then they come into the mainstream economy, debt becomes possible, more investment on like things which are like in the quote unquote white economy, right? Like as Adhil was saying, instead of buying a house, like they would like look for an online instrument like a mutual fund or other things which are then part of the mainstream economy because they've paid taxes on it. So we literally measure the GDP and the index of India. So we see like as more people enter the... So demonetization had a huge positive impact. Then the other part which we think is demonetization and GST to a large extent are linked in the sense like the cash reduction in the system had to happen. Otherwise, as the GST is a network-based tax system, so the entire chain would become like cash only. So we saw like that was one of the impacts, like at least the strong move by Modi had. So those are thoughts like we are very like positively impacted by demonetization. We see a lot of people declaring incomes now, even like family members declaring income, and people starting to take this very, very seriously because like government is really asking that question, right? Where did this cash come from? Where did this income come from? So I think really, really positive.
So I think, at least from our point of view, I think the overall summary would be cautiously optimistic. I know that many folks have seen a very positive impact on their business. We have a somewhat unique vantage point where we have a portfolio of companies that do both tech and consumer products. And so maybe the best way for us to understand demonetization was November and post-November, because November was a very different month than any other month that we'd seen so far. In November, we saw fairly dramatic differences in people's P&L. In fact, one of our founders was joking that, years down the line, people will look back at P&Ls and say, hey, this month was just an aberration, let's ignore that. And that was both positive and negative. We had companies that saw a 20-30% jump in top line. We had companies that saw a 30-40% drop in top line. And that kind of depends broadly on whether the goods or the services that they provide were essential or not. All essential services, people have to eat. People have to buy groceries. People have to get from one place to another. That just meant that more people were spending online for these things, and so those companies benefited very nicely. Anything that was discretionary was a fairly strong negative impact. At least what we've seen since then has been, much like every sort of external stimulus, there is an impact, and then sort of things start to settle, and they settle at a plateau that's better than the previous norm. So, the number of people paying online, the number of people with bank accounts, the number of people using electronic services has definitely gone up, but it's not at the same peak that it was at in November. And frankly, we are seeing cash coming back into the system. Lots of people in our portfolio as well. We're not at the same levels as which we were back pre-November, but we're definitely not at that level of electronic payment acceptance that we were at in November. So, net is quite a positive, but I think the more interesting things are all the things that are happening around demonetization. Things like UPI, things like Aadhaar. I think those are things that are going to add to financial inclusion a lot more sustainably in the long term than one-time events like demonetization.
Thanks, Abheek. I agree most with the last part of what you said about, we need a number of systemic changes rather than one-time changes to really drive, changes both in consumer behavior, the way people buy financial services, the way people interact with banks, to drive costs down. And actually, it is developments like, 1 billion Aadhaar cards, every almost, 1 billion mobile connections, and the lowering almost zero variable transaction costs, which are going to have a huge impact on the way consumers actually purchase financial services. I think demonetization has indeed led to a big sort of short-term negative blip for the whole financial inclusion sector. This is because, it affected the field operations of most institutions that were collecting in cash. So the lack of cash, both the customer's end as well as at the institutional end on the disbursement side, did have a huge impact on operations itself, and operations could not be conducted. That itself has eased off over the last sort of 2.5, 3 months, and we are seeing operations getting back to normal. But I cannot say, hand on heart, that effect was positive. That effect was certainly negative. What is exciting about the future is, is frankly speaking, much more infrastructure. The millions of merchants that Airtel as a payment bank is acquiring, the Paytms of the world who are setting up merchants all over, does mean that potentially cash can just be handled separately from financial services operations, which is to say that if I did have, as living in a tier 6 village, if the nearest ATM is 10 kilometers away, it's really pointless. It costs me, 500 rupees to go and conduct any transaction at an ATM. It simply does not make sense. I will not use it, no matter what, right? It doesn't make any economic sense to me. But if there were more sort of cash out points at the rural level, it would certainly drive digital behavior. And the payment banks, I think that's a very exciting development, that the number of sort of cash out points will probably go up 10x, probably 100x. We have 250,000 ATMs for a country of 1.3 billion people, and it's the lowest ratio anywhere in the world. So clearly not enough. And so that utility, that public utility, needs to increase. The other thing I'd like to say is that the bottom 600 million customers that we focus on could have actually a faster transition to digital finance. Let me take a couple of examples. We started off with biometric authentication way before Aadhaar, way before demonetization. And therefore, there was no need for the customer to carry any documents 8 years ago. and the customers were fine. They adopted because they didn't know anything else. They didn't have a current habit to break out of. So it was far easier. Today, we also have mobile operations happening in the field, in villages which have sort of less than 5 to 10,000 population. And again, the movement from the branch to field operations on a mobile is very smooth. Again, I would argue precisely because the bank has always been 10, 15, 20 kilometers away and has been irrelevant to the life of this consumer. So therefore, in some sense, the shifting of consumer behavior, that challenge doesn't exist because you're actually saying, I'm developing a new habit for the first time, much easier. So I would say that the bottom 600 million actually has a lot of potential. We are very excited about more infrastructure coming in. We are very excited also about some of RBI's new directions, such as the account aggregator guidelines, which really makes the digital footprint of the customer utility that the customer owns and can provide to anybody who is interested. So even if, for example, a typical customer in our service areas would be 150 to 200,000 rupees of income, agri-labor, sheep rearing, cattle rearing, to supplement income, less than 1 acre of land. This is sort of what the median customer looks like. And that person's digital footprint probably consists of, credit bureau records and, one bank account scarcely used, but which probably is receiving NREGA payments, which probably is receiving your LPG subsidies, and so on. And so there's something to start with, but I believe that with, deeper digital footprints and that being accessible to a variety of institutions, that could be really transformational because the customer then owns this data and can provide it to get better rates of interest and a whole range of financial services. Overall excited for the, future of fintech, somewhat unrelated to demonetization.
Thanks. Very point to meet the investor relations people from 3 different MFIs, trying to understand how collection has been impacted. And, it was heartening to know that things are returning back almost to normal, except the election, affected areas like Western UP and Maharashtra, etc. I think within our own portfolio, we have a number of companies working with banks and merchants to enable them to go digital. And I think after demonetization, they have more business than they can handle. The question in my mind is this surge in digital adoption in payments or otherwise, is this going to have the same impact, for example, like what the big billion-day sale had for Flipkart? It was a big bump and then it remained there. Or does it mean revert back? What is the panel's view on this?
So I can answer it from the financial product side, right? Not from the payment side. I'll let someone else handle that part. On the financial product side, we work across 75 financial institutions. So these are banks, they're mutual funds, they're insurance companies, and we work with them to make the transaction paperless. What we're seeing, right, is let's assume even 50% of what came in goes out. There's still going to be a significant amount of money retained in the system. I think the question that tech companies like Bank Bazaar are asking themselves is how trustworthy and easy can we make it to deploy this money? Now, if I tell you that you have to go stand in line, submit 100 pieces of paper, then you will get a certain product that you're looking for, be it a mutual fund, be it a life insurance, you might think twice, right? And you might say, no, let me just use it as cash, or let me just put it somewhere else. But if on the mobile phone, and the beauty of mobile tech, right, is that it doesn't matter if you're servicing a very well-savvy corporate or whether you're servicing someone who's just literate, the mobile technology reaches everyone. If we can make it convenient enough that on your mobile phone, because of the integration with Aadhaar stack, because of the integration with all of the data that the government of India is making available in a secure fashion, you can make the transaction paperless I think tremendous value will be released. So I think what tech companies are asking themselves, right, is saying, is there money retained in the system? The answer is yes. We can debate how much it will be. Now, can we make it extremely easy for both the common man and any mobile phone user in the country to deploy that paperless? I think that's the challenge that we're facing today. And the good news is, the government is helping us succeed.
Right. So, had done a sudden decision, right, like to demonetize the entire country. Now, even for the government, like they have to show or they have to bring about an outcome. And one of those outcomes is like the reduction of corruption or the inclusion of more people in the mainstream economy. One of the efforts is obviously more digitization. But the other effort is also to reduce like the transactions which don't happen in the mainstream economy, right? Like so. With that, like there's a lot of effort the government itself is making, which is consistent. It's not going out. Like basically, some of the things which they are doing is around just a simple example. The tax department has been tracking cash. Like so, every cash deposit, the government got a notification. Now, if you log into the government portal or the Clear Tax portal, you'll see like how what the summary is and what reporting you need to do. Second, after that is like there's a lot of focus in bringing about digital systems for taxes, right? Like the GST system is an entirely paperless system. So the thing Adhil referred to, the ground up design of the system is an entirely paperless system. So the government is actually thinking in those directions of how do you take an economy, a country which is not anyway served by any digital system, and then create a grounds up system which has identity in Aadhaar built in, payments in UPI built in, and then completely digital systems built in. So overall, I think from the tax fintech perspective, like the entire thing is paperless, the entire thing is technology led. So for us, like we feel like this is not a temporary blip. The sustained advantage will ensue. The government has like now taken on a deep data analytics project, which is like trying to identify infractions using machine learning and data science. And one would think like the Indian government is thinking about such complex projects. So very exciting, like in terms of what is the intent, and obviously the execution has to meet. So from a sectoral perspective, right, a lot of opportunities get unlocked because for small medium businesses, like their entire reporting, the entire workflow becomes completely digital. They get better access to, because a system of record gets created. They're in every transaction they do is now recorded in a way which people can verify. They get access to better credit. They get access to the better banking system, whether it comes from like a more modern a platform or like a more traditional platform. That doesn't matter. Like people will get better electronic systems, so which leads to better like everything, like access to credit, etc., etc. So I think overall, like this industry, the fintech industry, will count the November epoch as like an event which will have sustained advantage.
So I think 3 or 4 things are going to be deeply transformational for financial services access, at the bottom of the pyramid, and sort of focusing on that area, because that I think is a huge sort of market opportunity as well as a big need from a government's perspective, and they're really pushing this. One is, and then if you fast forward 6 years to now and you say KYC plus Aadhaar, that is tremendous, because now the cost of authenticating a client is 0. So it makes enormous difference. I think the third thing for us is sort of just the development of UPI for feature phones, which is really the dominant phone that the bottom 600 million people have. And of course, there is a movement with higher income levels to adoption of smartphones, but this is where we are today. The bottom 600 million, almost 90% of them have feature phones, and almost everybody has a feature phone, but nobody has a smartphone. So I think that the fact that UPI allows digital payments, to institutions really makes both, let's say, products like insurance possible with monthly collections. It makes microfinance institutions' networks much more efficient. An average microfinance institution probably spends of a 100 rupee loan something like 3 to 4 rupees just on the cost of carrying cash, insuring cash, storing cash. Cash is pretty expensive. So, but you do need sort of the cash points and UPI. So I think it's exciting. I think the cost of transactions coming down and the digital footprint going up and the customer owning their own digital footprint are, frankly speaking, revolutionary. I do believe we are going to see a massive sort of surge in adoption. It's up to sort of entrepreneurs to grab the opportunity.
Thanks. If I may summarize, I think what the panel is saying is, if it's easier to be digital than to pay with cash, people will prefer digital. But you made a point that the bottom of the pyramid doesn't have smartphones yet. So it has to be feature phone friendly. Thank you very much. I think that concludes our panel. Please give a big hand to this panel.